Today we're going to paint a very nautical themed canvas with a striped background and an anchor on top of it. So we've got our canvas panel here. Mine is 9 by 12. You can also use paper, but just be sure you use paper meant for acrylic painting, because if you use paper that's not heavy enough, it'll get soggy with all the moisture in the water. So you want to make sure you use paper that's a heavy enough weight. So we've got our canvas here. I've only got 4 colors: navy blue, white, black, and gray. If you don't have gray, just mix black and white together and you'll make gray. I've also got a ruler. We're gonna need that, a pencil, painter's tape as well. We're gonna use this to tape off our background to make our lines super straight across the back. As usual, I've got my clean water cup. We'll only need our wide flat brush and our smaller flat brush today, but I've also included a small round brush just to show you how you could use this too if you feel more comfortable with a round brush or if that's all you have. So clean water cup and then a paper towel to blot our paintbrush on when we take it out of the water. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'm going to use my wide flat brush first, pull it out of the water, blot off that excess water so it's not dripping. And we're gonna start with white paint. We're gonna paint our entire canvas white. And this may seem like a weird step because canvases are usually already white, but we're gonna do our stripes in navy blue and white. So when we tape it off, we're gonna fill in the navy blue. And I never like to leave canvas unpainted, just the canvas color. So if there's an area of canvas that's supposed to be white, I always paint it white because it gives it that paint texture. So if you were to just leave your canvas bare during this part, your final product is not going to have a paint texture for the entire canvas. Does that make sense? So we're gonna go ahead and do a layer of white, then we'll let it dry, then we're gonna paint our blue stripes. That way our white is already done when we're painting our blue. So we're just gonna fill in the entire canvas, almost done. You can tell where you have paint because it's wet and shiny, so I know it's kind of hard to see, but I want to make sure we get all those edges, do our best to fill in the entire canvas. And then once you get to this point where it's mostly done, we're going to let it dry. Put your paintbrush in your water cup. That way the paint doesn't dry on your paintbrush. And a quick way to dry your canvas is to use a hair dryer. If you don't have one, you can just let it sit for a little while and it'll dry. Acrylic paint dries pretty quickly, but I'm gonna let mine dry and then we'll get started with the next step. Okay, with our dry canvas, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but hopefully you can see on your canvas. You can't see that canvas texture anymore. It's a little bit more smooth because it's got the paint texture on top of it. So now what we want to do is paint our stripes. This is where our ruler comes into play. So my canvas is 12 inches tall and I want to have my navy stripes both on the top and the bottom. So I say that because if I were to go every 2 inches and do thick stripes, it would be navy, white, navy, white, navy, white, and I would wind up with a navy on the bottom or the top and then a white on the other side. But I want my canvas to be framed in navy blue stripes. So what I'm going to do instead is measure every 1.75 inches. So 1.75 inches should give me a navy stripe on the bottom and a navy stripe on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and mark off every 1.75 inches on this side and then on this side, and then we'll be able to tape across. Okay. There's one. Go. Okay, it looks like our top stripe is gonna be a little bit less thick, but that's okay. We can deal with that. This is me not being a mathematician. It's fine, we're gonna roll with it. All right, now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, and then what I'm actually gonna do is flip the canvas so that this winds up being the top, because I do want the thick stripe to be on the top, and that's fine. But if we check our work, it'll be navy, white, navy, white, navy, white, navy. So we did get that right, but the top stripe is just gonna be a little bit thinner, and that's okay. All right, so I'm gonna do the same thing on this side so that we can connect the dots. So we're gonna go to 1.5 inches. Part of the issue here is my ruler, there's a, maybe 1/8 of an inch here that the bottom stripe is gonna be a little bit thicker because of how my ruler sits on my easel. So that's just something to note so that you don't make the same mistake I did. All right, we're just gonna keep going. All right, so we've got our marks and now we can connect them. So you can either connect them with a ruler or just tape it. I'm gonna go ahead and connect them with a ruler, and the reason why is because our stripes are gonna be navy blue. It's gonna be a dark color of paint, so it will be able to cover this pencil mark. So I'm not super worried about the pencil mark being visible because our paint's gonna cover it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and connect these lines that makes it easier to tape. Now you don't have to do this step, totally up to you, but I'm doing this step. It does make it a little bit easier, and that's what we're going for. Okay, so now you can see the difference. This one is a lot thinner, right? That's okay. Like I said, what we're gonna do to fix it, not fix it, but adjust for it, is flip it around so the thick stripe winds up on the top of our canvas. It's gonna make it a little less obvious that the bottom stripe isn't quite even. That's just one example of how you can adjust your painting and just sort of pivot when something doesn't go completely your way. It's totally fine, and you can always adjust or, paint over something or whatever. You can always make a change. So that's what we're gonna do now. And now we're gonna go ahead and tape it off. So since you've got your lines there, if you feel confident painting a straight line, you can totally do that. I'm gonna go ahead and tape it off. I've got my painter's tape here, ripped off a piece about a little longer than the width of the canvas. And we wanna be sure that our tape sits in the white spaces. So this space here is gonna wind up being painted white. So I'm gonna set my tape, didn't quite get it straight. I'm gonna set my tape in the white space, right? This is gonna be blue, this one's gonna be blue. So my next one, I'm gonna set it right on top of the tape I just did. Rip another piece. And what you wanna do is set it just under your pencil line so that your pencil line gets covered by paint. So you'll notice that you can still see my pencil line here on this one and down here, because I want that to be covered by blue paint. So then you just smooth it out, and we're gonna do the same thing in this stripe, because this stripe's gonna be white and this one's gonna be blue. And we're taping off so that we can paint the blue stripes more easily. Okay, ripped another piece of tape. Like I said, taping it so that the pencil line is a little bit visible so that it gets covered by paint. It doesn't have to be super visible. It doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit, because you just want to cover it up. You don't want it to be, you know, a whole 1/4 of an inch above it or anything like that. Something up here. And it's not the end of the world if you don't do this. You can always come back with some white paint in the white areas and cover it if you need to. Right, this is our last one, our last space. One more piece of tape after this. All right, so now you see we've got our blue spaces taped off, right? So these extra flaps you don't have to worry about. You don't have to tape it all the way down. You can just leave them. In fact, if they're there like that, it's gonna be a little bit easier to pull it off, okay? So now what we're gonna do, I'm gonna show you a trick to painting straight lines with tape. All right, cleaning off our brush, getting it out of the water, we are actually going to paint each section white first. And the reason we're gonna do that, paint the white, is it's gonna seal the tape. So we're gonna paint the white, let it dry, then we're gonna come back with our blue, and the white will create a barrier so none of the blue is gonna seep through. So you can use that when you're painting, anytime you're painting with tape and you need to paint a straight line. You can paint the white first, or whatever the background color is that you're doing. Paint that first. So if your whole canvas is pink or your whole wall is pink, paint that pink, then let it dry with the tape on there, then come back and paint the color you want to, and it should create a straight line for you. So we're starting with white, just filling the whole thing in with white. You don't actually have to fill the whole thing in, you just have to create the barrier, paint over the tape. But since these stripes are such a small area, I am painting the whole thing. All right, so we've got our barriers done. Then we're gonna let this dry, and then we're gonna paint our navy blue. Just wanna make sure that it's nice, fully covered along those edges. Okay, my paint is dry. Grab my paintbrush out of the water, make sure there's no more white paint on it, and now we're gonna paint our navy blue stripes. So grab some navy blue paint, and fill in your taped off areas. We're using horizontal paint strokes. We don't really want to see the paint strokes since these are horizontal stripes. That's why we're using the horizontal stroke, so that we don't really see it. We don't notice them. We just want to see the color. So I've talked before about how your paint stroke can add to your painting. Well, in this case, our paint stroke is blending with our painting. We don't want it to be obvious. To get a little bit more paint, just keep going. All right, now that I've painted all of the stripes, I'm just gonna go over some of the spots that are lighter that could use just a second layer before we take off our paint. Our tape. Gonna grab a little bit more paint, finish up this stripe here. There we go. Okay, so horizontal paint strokes the whole way. We've got it mostly filled in. And we're gonna take off our paint. Our tape. So we're gonna start at the side, peel it. We've got a nice, crisp line. Excellent. Set that off to the side. I got stuck to my paintbrushes. All right, let's do the next one. Be sure, if you have painty fingers, don't touch your canvas. Nice crisp line, except on the edges where it leaked a little bit. That's okay. My fault for probably not securing it around the edges. It's all right, we can fix it. All right, mostly crisp line, a little bit up there, not a problem. We can always paint over that. For the most part, our trick worked where we paint the base layer or the base color over the tape first, creates a nice barrier, and then we paint our dark color or our other color. So we're gonna let this dry now. Use your hair dryer or let it sit, and then we'll touch up these areas and we'll move on to our anchor. Okay, I am switching to my small flat brush now because it gives me a little bit more control on these smaller areas that we're gonna cover up. So when you have paint that's seeped through a horizontal line, a little bit like right in here, turn your brush sideways and push upward. Just ever so slightly, very gentle to cover that up. Okay, that keeps your horizontal line intact and straight. It's just a little tip. All right, now we're gonna do the same thing. If you have an area like right in here where it's seeped a little bit, do the same thing, just turn your brush upwards and press down very gently like that, and you can cover those lines or those marks. So the reason we turn our brush horizontally is because it is even with the line that way. We're gonna come do this one here. And then some of these bigger spots. Same thing, we're using our brush sideways. That one I did too much, but that's okay. Since it's dry, we can just wipe it off. Or you can use your paper towel. You can always just come over the top of it too. I'm gonna try to get it off though. Not quite. Okay, we're just gonna add, I added some more white. That's all right, we can always fix it. All right, let's just keep going though. Fixing all these little areas where the paint seeped through. Oops. See, this is why I like to get it, I like to take the extra time to do that step where you add that base layer first, because for the most part, our lines are very straight. So when you have to go back and correct, at least for me, I do things like this, where I dip into the line. So even with all of the tricks, pushing the brush up and down and turning it horizontally, I still wind up with things like that. So that's why I take that extra step and that extra time to really make sure I can get the lines straight as possible and as clean as possible on the first try. So now I'm just gonna come touch up where I accidentally added some white into the blue with my paper towel. And like I said before, you know, it's always fixable, but I just want to reiterate that taking the extra time to do those preparation steps in the beginning will save you a lot of hassle, because we didn't have to correct that much. But if you didn't do that, you might have a lot more bleed, a lot more lines that aren't all the way straight, like if you don't tape at all. So I wanted a really crisp, clean, nautical look, and that's what we have. So I'm gonna let this dry, and then we're going to do our anchor. Okay, we're gonna sketch on our anchor first before we paint it. So grab your pencil, and then an anchor shape, it's gonna come sideways across the canvas like this. So rather than being centered, we're gonna paint our anchor at an angle. So an anchor has a long middle piece, a curved bottom, and then a straight part at the top with the circle at the very top, okay? So when you're positioning it, make sure that you have room for everything. So if I want the bottom to be here, visually, I want to look up and make sure the top circle doesn't go past here. So we're going to start with the top, then we're going to do our line down the middle, knowing that we want our bottom to sit right here, okay? So we're just going to sketch on a basic circle. That's all we need, okay? Very light. I'm not even sure if that's going to show up on the camera. See if that helps a little bit. So super light, because we do have to cover this up. So although we're using gray paint, so it should not be too difficult. Now we're gonna do our straight line down the middle. Again, this is just a guide. And right about here in this second navy blue line is where I'm going to start the curve. So we're gonna do a smile like that, but then the bottom is gonna curve at more of a deeper angle, with the apex of the curve being right in the center of that middle line. Okay, just like that. And then we're gonna do, here I'm gonna pull it closer a little bit, just like that. And then we're going to add some points to the curve, because an anchor has these pointed edges. So we're gonna do a little triangle on either side, like that. Sketch it on there, and then we'll paint over it. I want them to be fairly even. There we go. And then all we have left to do is our middle line across the top. Just like that. So kind of a short little section here at the top, just below the circular part where a rope would attach. And then we've got our long center line, and then our hooks that it would hopefully grasp and hook into. You could even do a point at the bottom too. Mine's kind of a curve, but you could curve the other way and come to a point and then back up to your hook. I'm gonna leave mine as a curve, and now we can go ahead and get started painting. So clean off the flat brush that you were using, the small flat brush, and we're gonna grab some gray paint. We're just gonna fill in the entire area we just painted. So you can take your brush and just drag it to do that base middle line, and then come back and fill in. Now, other options for this, you could paint your anchor a different color. It'd be fun to do like a coral orange with this navy background. That would be interesting, or red even, if you want to go super nautical. We're gonna paint ours gray because we're also gonna add some detail to it. We're gonna paint some highlights and shadows to it. Give it kind of a shiny effect. Alternatively, you could even use silver if you wanted to, if you have silver paint. We're just getting that middle line as straight as possible. Now let's fill in the bottom area. We're just following our guide that we already painted. It's always easiest to paint your outline first and then fill in the middle. So if you go along the edges on both sides, then you can fill in that middle between those edges. It just makes it a little bit easier. Now we'll fill in our triangular hooks. I'm using my paintbrush pointed down, so kind of pointed down like this. That gives me a little bit more control in some smaller areas like these points of the triangle. We don't necessarily need them to come to a super sharp point, but it makes it a little bit easier to paint like this when you need a little bit more of controlled edges. So now we're going to come to this side and do the same thing. I start at the top, come down, and back up. The other side, start at the top, come down, and back up. And then you can kind of touch up those edges as you need to once you have your basic shape done. There we go. Now let's move to the top. I'm gonna do the line across first. You can turn your brush, depending on the width of your actual flat brush, you can just turn it sideways and just come across like that. What I want to make sure is one edge doesn't have these paint strokes on the tip, so I'm just gonna clean up that edge. All right, now all we have left to do is the circle at the very top. So we're gonna take our brush. Now our circle's a little bit thinner than this right here. So we're gonna take our brush sideways and do the outer edge and then the inner edge, okay? So our brush is pointed down right at the canvas. Got a circle like that. And then come and do the inner edge. Now it's hard to paint a circle freehand like this. So don't get discouraged, okay? You can do it, you can touch up. Once you get it done, then you can come back and touch up some of these edges. Alternatively, you could trace something that's circular. So you could trace a bottle cap or something kind of small and circular like a bottle of paint if you wanted to. But you don't have to worry about it being super perfect. Seriously. You can always touch up. You can always make changes. All right, so we've got our anchor, we've got our base anchor. See, I'm gonna have to come back and touch up again right in there because I dipped my finger in the navy and then touched the white. So it's no problem if you have to go back and fix something. It's really not an issue. Okay, so now we are going to add some highlights and shadows. And we're gonna do that by grabbing, you don't even have to clean your brush off. I'm gonna get the excess paint off my brush, but I don't need the gray to be completely gone. So I'm just gonna add another layer here just to get that excess paint off. And then we're gonna grab some white paint. And we're gonna come in on the top side of everything and do a white highlight. Like that. Come over here. We're adding in the highlight, then we're gonna come back and blend, okay? like that. Do one over here too, because that's kind of facing up. And then what another option you can do is, because anchors, they're not flat, they have kind of a point, like a peak at the bottom, come to a white line through the bottom like that too. And then we're gonna blend it and it's gonna look cool and 3D. You can do the same thing if you want to, kind of right in here. A thin white line down the middle and right here, okay? So now clean off your brush and we're gonna come in with a clean brush, no paint on it, and blend it a little bit. What this does is it makes it so that you have a little bit more control about the amount of paint going on your canvas. Clean off your brush if it gets too much on there and come back again with a clean brush. This blends your white without adding more paint, like I was saying. Okay, we're gonna I'm gonna clean my brush one more time. Come to the bottom. Same thing. I'm gonna take our white, just blend it out a little bit. We might need to add more gray depending on if your gray is dry on the bottom. You may need to add more. We don't want it to be completely dry, just a little bit tacky. You want there to be some paint there still to be able to blend. Okay. Same thing over here, just blend it out. You just get rid of that super bold white line. And then across the bottom as well. Not the very bottom, just the bottom of that center line that we made. All right, so it's looking pretty 3D, right? I'm gonna add a little bit more white to the top here. And then we're gonna come in and add some shadows. All right, so I'll clean off my brush, come back in with a clean brush and blend. Doesn't need a lot of blending, but just a little bit. There we go. All right, so once you get to this point, clean your brush and we're gonna get a little bit of black. Now we don't want a lot because a little bit of black goes a long way. So just get a little bit on your brush, just the tiniest bit, and we're gonna start doing some shadows, okay? So we're gonna do shadows on the other side from where we did the white. My brush is slippery because of the water. I wanna make sure I have good control of it. All right, so we're gonna do some black on the inside of this curve, okay? And then over here on the very outside. Again, a little bit of black is gonna go a long way. Now take your brush and blend upward. Like that. You don't want to completely cover the gray, but you want to blend that black so it moves toward the center, toward the hole in this case. Okay? So we've got that. Blending toward the center. Now we're going to grab a little bit more black, just a little bit, not a lot. I mean, I don't have big globs of black paint. In fact, that is too much. Just a little bit so that when it's almost like you're drawing with your paintbrush, okay? So we're gonna do the whole right side of our anchor with black paint. Just a touch right in there. Come on the side here. I'm gonna come into the middle just to show that this is a 3D section of it, and then come all the way down this middle section. Okay, so why did I go past the middle right here? Because that is sticking out and we wanna show that, okay? We wanna show that this piece that's going across is not flush with that center line. All right, cleaning my paintbrush now. We're gonna blend what we've painted. I'm gonna come in here while it's still wet and blend. Now you could do all of this if you wanted to with your round brush. If you feel more comfortable using a round brush than a flat brush, that's fine. Do what's comfortable for you. I'll show you. So take your round brush, same thing, no paint on it, and we're just blending. Might need to get a little bit of gray paint for this section here because it looks like it's kind of dried. But you can see it's the same steps here, just blending with that black. Okay, added some more gray. Now I'm gonna come in with my black outline. Same thing, and then we blend. Blending toward the middle. If you notice you have too much paint on your brush, that's fine. Just clean your brush off and then come back with a clean brush. Then you can create that nice, soft blend. That's what we're going for, okay? All the way toward the middle. You don't want to go past the midpoint because then it kind of gets into where the highlight should be, okay? So same thing. Like I said, I've switched brushes, but this whole process can be done with a round brush or a flat brush. It's really up to you. Whatever you feel more comfortable with. Sometimes a round brush gives you a little bit more control, whereas a flat brush can hold a little bit more paint. So really, you know, it's like I said, it's up to you. So we're gonna start over here with the bottom of this hook. Now I didn't go all the way to the tip because this side is where that light's coming from. So we're gonna have more shadow over here. All right, going through the whole bottom. We are gonna have to add gray paint. At least I am, because my gray is dry, which means it's just not, I mean, you can't blend dry paint. That just shows you how fast acrylic paint dries though. All right, I'm gonna stop there, clean my brush, grab some gray so I can blend with this black to create a soft blended look. We're just gonna add gray paint right up against where the black is, and then we're gonna clean our brush off and blend it. Okay. Now again, the reason I did that is because we can't blend dry paint. So the gray paint was already dry, and to be able to create this soft blended look that we're doing with this shadow here, we need to be able to blend it with wet paint. So that's why I added more gray paint across the bottom. So it's pretty blended. Now you can blend up. Don't go past that center line that we made with the white. It's looking more and more 3D with all of these highlights and shadows that we're adding. So now we're going to come do this other hook or spear on the other side. I'm going to do a little bit of a shadow right in here. Because if you think about it, even over here there would be a little something, because that's where no light is hitting this area, okay? So just think about how light is going to hit what you're painting. It even helps to set up even a still life and a little lamp. Even if you just have, you know, some fruit or something to shine it on, just to see how the light affects what you're working with. And then you can apply that toward your paintings. All right, I added some gray paint. I'm cleaning off my brush, coming back in with a clean brush to smooth that out and make it more blended. Remember, this side was going to be more shadowed because it's behind, it's the furthest away from the light source. Okay, fill in this shadow here, it's underneath, even taking it all the way across to the middle. And just blending, okay? Blending with a clean brush. The only paint on the brush is the paint we've picked up while we're blending right now. Now what I'm gonna do is come over on this side and just blend that shadow just a little bit, doesn't need a lot. And there we go. So now we're done. The only thing we need to do, at least I need to do on my canvas, is touch up this little mark right here that I made earlier on. There's one right here too. So at this point you can touch up anywhere that you need to, but we've got our nautical themed canvas done. It'd be cool if you wanted to add to it, ways you could add to it. You could add a rope, you could add a chain. If you wanted to, you could do some lettering down here on the bottom. That would be cool. Again, you could change the colors around, do a different color anchor or a different color background. So there's lots of ways you can do this painting and make it your own and make it different. But I hope that you've learned something. You've learned how to highlight and shadow and anchor in particular. We've learned a trick to painting stripes with clean, crisp lines by using tape and then painting the base layer of your paint, or the base color of your paint first. I hope you had fun. I can't wait to see your paintings. So share them, tag me so I can see it. If you have questions, as usual, add them in the comments and I'm happy to answer. And I will see you guys next time.